I'm excited to see you all. Thanks for joining us this Monday when we've got some sunshine coming, so that's always nice to see. We're going to go ahead and get started here, and I'm sharing the agenda here as soon as I can get that pulled up. Let me make sure that I've got that. Hold on just a second. There we go. Perfect. Everybody can see that. Okay. We do have a couple of things to discuss before we go into breakout rooms. One of those is the next meeting that had been sent out on invitation to be on March the 6th, which is a Monday, but there's been some conflicts with that date. So we are going to change it to Wednesday, March the 8th at the same time. It'll be 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 3 to 5 for those of you joining us from Central Time like me. And then Kathy had some discussion to take place before our breakout rooms about our charter and additional resources. So Kathy, do you want to go ahead and do that? I can stop sharing, Kathy, if you've got things you want to pull up.
I don't have anything that I want to pull up. It's just some quick reminders of some of the things that we'll need to keep in mind as we move forward. So just give me a second. So hi, everybody. It's good to see all of you. Thank you for joining us. And a couple of the reminders is that we have a way of communicating with everyone. And so our committee's communication, are you all familiar with it and aware of how we're going about communicating with you? If you're not, we have a Google Drive that's dedicated to our committee work. And so you can go to that platform, and it is not a public platform. It's only available to us as committee members. And the documents that we are creating and some that you're sharing as you're finding information for your work stream group are all there. And the one that I want to bring your attention to is our frequently asked questions. And these questions are fluid. As we learn and grow, we're going to be sure to revisit those and to build on what we've learned. So make sure that if you ever have a question about something you're not sure, you can't reach anyone, if you could go to the frequently asked questions, you'll find answers that you may be looking for. And if not, you're always welcome to communicate with Sarah or I, and we'll be happy to try and do our best to answer those questions. Next, I want to share with you about the protocol for using our Google Drive. Posting to the Google Drive. You can post information that you feel is relevant to our work to give us updates. If you're working in your work stream group and you find something that you think that everybody might benefit from having that information about, please be sure and share that. Just remember, as long as it's related to the work that we're doing. And there's also a resource list that I just put up, and I'm not for sure if you can access it. And it gives you a list of resources that some of the work stream groups have already shared with us. It's not everyone's, and so as that too is also fluid. So we'll be going through updating that on a regular basis. There's books as well as articles and newspaper reports about some of the work that we are looking at in terms of our work stream groups. And finally, I want to share with you information about our charter, and that's our next step. And I don't know if you recall when you received the email from Sarah last week regarding our meeting as well as what's coming up next. So it's not too late for you to share your comments regarding our charter. However, on February 9th, you will be sent a survey to vote on the charter. And some of you may be wondering why we have a charter. Well, the purpose of our charter is to outline what our mission is and what our composition is and a basic operating rules for accelerating innovative standing committees. So what we're trying to do is what our charter will outline for us. So just a reminder, on February 9th, if you could vote on the charter, the content of the charter, and you can also, Sarah did send you a link. If you go back to the last email that Sarah sent, it tells you how to access the charter. And that was sent, I think, on January 31st, around that time. So if you'll look for that, and then our next steps for you to, after voting on it, is that the document will be finalized. And that's around the 15th of February. We hope to have that finalized. So we're moving right along. That's one of the things that I'm excited about, is that with the support of the extended team as well as KDE, we're moving forward with our work. And sometimes it seems like it's slow, but it's not. We're right where we need to be right now. And then as we move into February, we're also going to be preparing our reports that we will need for reporting out to the full council. And we'll send you a schedule of those things as well. And I think that that is all that I had to share today. Does anyone have any questions? I know it was a lot. It was a mouthful. It was a lot for me to share. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat room, and I'll go back and look at those as well. You guys are a quiet group.
Kathy, I was going to say, do you have the link for that FAQ document? I'm looking for it right now, and just so we can post it in the chat, and I'm having trouble finding it myself.
I think I always go to Andre whenever I need it. He's my go-to person. I can look for it while we're...
Yeah, and Kathy, if you haven't made any modifications to the last version that you and I have exchanged, and I can just quickly upload that. I'll go into that folder and do that.
Yeah, let's do that, Andre.
I haven't made any changes.
Okay. So it'll take me a minute here. Why don't you go ahead with something else? I want to make sure.
Suzanne is mentioning in the chat that she was wondering if they have recommendations for the charter, how to add comments, because they don't have editing rights. Those commenting rights aren't on that as either, Suzanne.
That's a mistake. You should, Suzanne, as a committee member, have those rights. So I'll look into that while we talk.
Okay. Because there are still, and she's right, she's mentioning there are still things that have like XXX that she would be helpful to suggest things on the chartering process. Thank you, Susan. Anybody else comments on or questions about the FAQ process or the chartering process before we go into our breakout room sessions? Okay, all right, well, I think
I'll just confirm the permissions are wrong in this folder, Suzanne. Thank you so much for flagging. I'm updating them now, so it might take me a couple of minutes, but yeah.
Okay. All right, so Susan's going to pull up our breakout rooms here in just a little bit. You will have to choose to send yourself to the correct room. We've got the learning within Kentucky work stream and then the learning outside Kentucky work stream. So we're going to get those pulled up in just a minute. If you'll pick yours and send yourself to the correct one. Okay. All right, looks like everybody's kind of made their way back into this main room, so welcome back. Kathy and I appreciate the discussion and the work that you all have put in over the course of the last month, researching and thinking about assessment and accountability systems both in and outside of the state. So we wanted to do a quick recap of what we discussed in the breakout rooms, because those are not shared out in, that discussion's not available out in the main meeting. That's being recorded and that's being streamed live on the KDE media portal. So we want to just kind of share a recap of our discussion today before we wrap up this meeting and sign off until next month. So Kathy, do you want to talk about what you all discussed in the Inside Kentucky group?
Sure. We had quite a bit of discussion and actions that we were looking at when with our discussion. One of them was to LERA and KERA is the Kentucky Education Reform Act. What does that look like? It was brought about as a result of a lawsuit that was brought by superintendents. I didn't realize it was the superintendents initially that had brought the suit, and it turned out that the Supreme Court said there was inequities throughout Kentucky in terms of educational services. And so we looked at what the system was that was used, and it was KIRIS, K-I-R-I-S, in terms of accountability and assessment, and what that looked like. And the accountability was on the school district, not so much as on this on student, but what the school district was doing in terms of accountability. And ladies, you can jump in at any time if I misquote anything. Let's see. From one of the major things, the challenges, one that came back from looking at some of this was looking at the assessment process and how it has changed since the initial KERA Act, and over the years it's continued to change. And there was a concern that as a time was not allowed for implementation of KERA in every component of KERA. So that's been one of those things that's that we'll be able to look at in terms of a challenge. And even right now, looking at what our assessments and our accountability looks like, it has changed. Even just in what 2020 was it, Jennifer, that you shared? She'll be giving us some updates on what it looks like as far as 2020 is concerned. Then the other thing that we've looked at was a framework. What kind of framework do we want in regards to accountability and assessment? And a couple of things that we learned were, what type of assessments are we using? Formative assessments or summative assessments? And once we're not really quite ready to be able to identify what the assessments look like, we have some questions that might guide us in terms of determining what those assessments will be looking like. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. I can't remember everything that we talked about. And there are a couple of resources also that you'll be able to find on the website in our folder that gives you, that you can look at that kind of gives you some guidance. So there were some slides that were shared, or some documents that were shared that you can read to get more understanding of what each one of these areas were that we were looking at. And finally, we looked at the juvenile juvenile system and what it looks like, and the different outliers, because if we think about what is needed and what services they're receiving as far as educational services. So you have the juvenile justice, you have home schools, you have hospital schools, and how are assessments, what assessments are being used, and how are those assessments impacting the results of what school districts are reporting? And how can we fine tune that so that we have a better understanding of how students within these groups are doing? And I think, you guys, anybody want to share anything else? I know I went really quickly. Okay, I think that's it for me, Sarah.
Okay. All right, so Learning Outside Kentucky, we shared out research from all around the country, different states that members had looked at, and made note of notable features in their accountability systems. We also looked at systems internationally. And then Susan is a great summarizer and notes taker, which I really appreciated because I can't talk and take notes at the same time. And so she had kind of talked about some of the emerging trends that we noticed across locations, those being the difference in professionalism and the prestige of teaching as a career. In other, especially internationally, that there would be a significant investment in teacher education and development in order for us to scale that within Kentucky. There was a focus on open-ended performance-based assessment and competency education, with centralized accountability being de-emphasized in the systems that we looked at, again, particularly internationally. The systems that we looked at were assessing disciplines beyond just math and reading. They were assessing science, social studies, arts, and then also we had several systems that had locally determined areas of emphasis for accountability and assessment. Equity was a central component of a lot of the systems that we looked at. They were using multiple measures and mechanisms to support that local assessment, particularly where the data was both immediate and it was useful, so that teachers were getting the assessment data back while they still had those students in front of them in class, so then they can make instructional decisions based around the work that they were doing in the classroom. And then that culture and context play a large role in program implementation and success. So that was kind of recapping the information that we shared out from our research. And then based on that, we're determining some next steps for our next meeting in March, and assigning people, or they're volunteering, really not being assigned, for the work that needs to be done. And that we narrowed that down to 3 components, which was finding some more detailed examples from some of these systems about specifics about what a task look like, what do the rubrics look like, and how can we bring those examples to life to help us picture what it looks like in practice. We would like to take a trip to Finland to be able to see their assessment system in action, but we're going to have to settle for YouTube is what we decided. And then the next task was to seek out more diverse examples of assessment systems. For examples, what is innovative that we can look at from these competency-based systems, or these performance assessment systems, profile of a learner. We discussed how there's quite a bit of overlap here between some of the work that our L3 systems are doing currently in the state. And so we felt like we might be verging a little bit into Inside Kentucky as well. And then also, what is the role of the federal government and the states and other places? How does those government strictures impact their assessment and accountability system? So we're going to be breaking that work up into assignments between those and our subcommittee, and then reporting back out on that in March. So then we can kind of finalize what information we're providing to the council as a whole come April. Did I leave anything out, y'all? Okay. It was a great discussion today. Lots of different topics and information that was being shared, and lots of research went into what we were presenting. So recapping everything else, and I think coming back to some of the things that just needing specific resources or supports, if you can reach out to Kathy or myself, we're happy to bring that up to the planning committee so we can get that information and those supports for you. So feel free to reach out to us as you're continuing to dive into this work. And then wanted to remind everybody again that our meeting is not going to be March the 6th, but it will be Wednesday, March the 8th. And so you'll be getting an updated invite for that from either Susan or myself, whichever method that ends up coming out. And then Kathy, did you want to touch back on the charter and the survey that's coming out this week before we adjourn? You're on mute, Kathy.
I'm sorry. We do hope that everybody will take an opportunity to look at the charter and give your input. Yes, there are things that need to be filled in, and we're hoping that you can give some input on what those things may be. So on Wednesday, if you could get that, if you could just take a moment and look at it, give us your feedback, and then we will start to work to finalize it. So we really, that's one of those things that is part of what we're supposed to be providing as part of United We Learn. So that's something, it's not something that's optional. It's something that we have to do and that we need to do. And we do want full input from everyone that's part of our committee.
Jennifer, anything else that we need to do before we adjourn today?
I think that covers it. And I just want to say personally, thank you to everyone for your time and commitment tonight. I want to especially thank Sarah and Kathy for their leadership, and where I'm excited about where we are today and the good learning that has taken place across both of those subcommittees. So really appreciated. Great work, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great night. See you next month.
Bye.